everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today what we're going to do is we're going to go into the fourth book of the Bible in the Old Testament, which is called the Book of Numbers. This book was also written by Moses. Let's recap where we left off last time. The third book that we just left was the book of Leviticus, and Moses is giving the people, the Israelites, the laws that God commands of them, that he's requiring of them. In the book of Numbers, this book is primarily about Moses, God telling Moses to count everybody. And the reason that he's going to count everybody is because he's got to see how many able-bodied men he's got who can be soldiers, because God is getting ready. He's preparing to take them into the promised land in this book. But they're going to have to fight. They're going to have to fight battles because this land is occupied by people already. And so they've got to suit up and get ready to go to battle. Now, God is going to help them if they're obedient and they trust in Him and all of that stuff. But nonetheless, they're going to have to fight for their land, okay? So that's what the book of Numbers is all about. It's about Moses having to count everybody and get them ready and prepared to move into Israel, the promised land, okay? All right, so let's get started. So we've got chapters 1 through 9 is basically about Moses just kind of getting everything together for the count, just counting everybody. And then God says, okay, well, I'm going to try to go ahead and speak a blessing over everybody. You know, God wants everybody to be blessed. And so that's where you probably heard this prayer. He says, may the Lord, so Aaron and his sons, this is how they bless the people. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord smile upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord show you His favor and give you His peace. That's a pretty popular prayer that you've probably heard before. So what He's doing is they're blessing the people before they get ready to enter the promised land. And in this book, you find out the Lord appears to the people as a fiery cloud, and He hovers above the tabernacle, and the people follow it. If God stopped and camped somewhere for the night or the week or the month or the year or whatever, the people would stop there, and that's where they would stay. And then they would see the fiery cloud move, and that's when they would get up and start moving. So they followed God in this fiery cloud all the way into the promised land. I thought that was pretty cool. All right, so let's flip over to chapter 11. Okay, this is where the book starts getting interesting and juicy. So by chapter 11, the people are complaining again. They're complaining to Moses because they don't have any meat to eat. All we have is this manna. You know, God's providing food for them every single day. And they're complaining that they don't have meat. They're really craving meat. And so God's like, okay, I'll tell you what. I'm going to send you quail. I'm going to send so many quail, you're going to gag. Okay, so He sends all of these birds, and the people are just out there just catching them and cooking them. And God is just disgusted by their gluttony, I guess. And so He, makes the birds sick, sends like a plague or whatever. And so the people who were just gorging themselves on the quail, they actually got sick and they died. A lot of the people died. God was just sick of them complaining about everything. It gets even juicier. In chapter 12, Miriam and Aaron, that's Moses' brother and sister, they start talking bad about Moses behind his back because he married a Cushite woman, a woman of a different race. And that made God mad, because you don't talk about his boy Moses now. Moses was his main man. And so he got really, really mad, and he gave Miriam leprosy, and, he was just really angry. And so you just don't do that. You don't talk bad about his main guy there. Okay. In chapter 13, God tells Moses, He said, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to send 12 scouts into the land of Israel I want you to send them into this land flowing with milk and honey, and I want you to have them scout out the land. And so they did. They sent 12 men into the land of Israel to kind of scout it out and kind of look at, what their competition was, how many people were living there, that kind of thing, to see what they were going into. So 10 of the scouts came back and were real negative, saying, oh my gosh, there's giants living there, the Amalekites and the Canaanites, and they're huge and they're going to kill us and we're never going to make it. And it's got some good stuff. There's some big grapes growing there, and it looks pretty, and there's a lot of good stuff there, but we will never survive against these people. There were only 2 of the 12 scouts, Caleb and Joshua. Caleb and Joshua were the only ones who were like, y'all, we've got God on our side. We can do this. It's going to be okay. We can take the land. But 10 of them were saying, it ain't going to happen. And so by chapter 14, the people start complaining about that, saying, look, because they took the side of the 10 scouts. They're like, you've brought us all the way out of Egypt just to die out here in this wilderness. We're not going to be able to defeat these people and take over their land. What do y'all, and complain. God has had enough. He is ready to kill everybody. And so Moses has to talk God down off the shelf, and say, God, don't do it. You stand by your word. You said you were going to create a nation, your own beloved nation of Jewish people to live in Israel. Don't do it. And he's like, okay, all right. So, but God does. He's mad enough. He still punishes them. He says, you know what? Okay. I'm going to keep y'all out here for a total of 40 years. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep y'all out here for 40 years. And all the old people that have been complaining the whole time, they're going to die. They'll never enter the promised land. Only their children, the younger generation will get to enter. And so they got mad when they heard, Moses reported that back to them. So they're like, no, we're going to go in and we're going to take the land ourselves anyway. So they tried to move on in by themselves. Some of them did try to move on into Israel. And the Amalekites and the Canaanites chased them out, so they didn't get to go in because God was not with them. He was very angry with them at that point. Okay, chapter 16. All right, so these 3 people, Korah was one of them. 3 men, they were like, Moses isn't doing a good job, just talking bad mouthing God's main man, Moses. He's not doing what he's supposed to do. We're not, this isn't the way things are supposed to be going, and we've been lied to and all this kind of stuff. And so these 3 men got together and started, spreading all these rumors and getting everybody fired up in the camps and everything to rebel against Moses. Well, God's going to punish them for that. And so what did he do? He just opened up the earth and swallowed them whole. So those 3 guys and their families and other people who were standing around complaining and trying to rebel, they got swallowed up and killed. All right. Then, a few days later, some more people started complaining. God was like, okay. So he sent another plague. He killed thousands more people. God is not playing, y'all. He's like, stop complaining. I'm here with you. You see me traveling above the tabernacle as a fiery cloud. I'm in your midst. I'm in your presence. I'm here for you. I'm on your side. I want to take you into the promised land. Stop complaining. But they just can't help themselves. Guess what? Chapter 20. Chapter 20, everybody, they run out of water again. They start complaining. Oh, we're just going to die out here. We should have stayed in Egypt. We were slaves, but at least we had food and water and blah, blah, blah. Start complaining again. So God tells Moses, and I want you to listen to this. God tells Moses, he says, speak to this rock and I will provide water from the rock. Moses is a little fed up with everybody and maybe feeling a little powerful at that point, like, So what he did was he took a staff and he struck the rock. He banged on the rock with his staff. Remember, God said, "Speak to the rock and water will come forth." Moses took his staff and he banged on the rock. That was a big mistake, because he didn't follow God's precise instructions to speak to the rock. He didn't trust God enough to just speak to it. He felt like he had to bang on it to get water to come out of it. God tells Moses and Aaron at that point that they will not enter the promised land. Moses, his main guy, who has been through all this and led these people this whole way, is not going to get to see the promised land, and his brother Aaron will not either. And so soon after that, Aaron died. Okay, so all right, now we're in chapters 21 through 24. God is winning. Even though he's mad at them, he's winning their battles for them, because they're encountering the people of the Moabites, and they're having to fight. And so God is with them and he's blessing them. Okay, let's flip over the page. Flip over chapter 26 of Numbers. Moses, now it's time for Moses to do a second recount. Moses has to recount everybody, because God has killed, he's sent all these things, these plagues and things, and time is going by, but all the complainers have basically died at this point in the wilderness. The only two original people who were on the original list that Moses made, the first time he counted them, are Caleb and Joshua. Remember, those were the two guys, the two scouts that went into the promised land and said, "Y'all, we got this. We can do this with God's help." Joshua and Caleb are the only two people who are on the original list, who were on the original list when Moses recounts. And so basically God tells Moses, he says, Joshua is going to take your place, Moses. So you need to start kind of telling him, what to do and how to do things, because he's going to take the helm, because Moses, you're not going to get to enter the promised land. Joshua is going to take the people into the promised land. And so by chapter 28, God, now remember in Leviticus, God was talking about his special festivals and holidays that he wants set aside and different offerings. So he reiterates that. He goes through the daily offerings, the Sabbath offerings, the monthly offerings, the Passover offerings, the Festival of Harvest, the Feast of Trumpets, the Day of Atonement, the Feast of Tabernacles. God goes through that again with Moses and says, this is what I want. This is, I want a bull, a ram, a lamb, all with no defects. These animals that he wants sacrificed, he wants them to be the best of the best. Okay, so he reiterates, this is what I want for you guys to honor me. Okay. All right, in chapter 33, God goes through with Moses the camps. Everywhere they have stopped and camped out. And so the reader, us, we can see all the places that Moses and the people camped before they actually entered the promised land. So all of that's recorded for us. And then by chapter 34 and 35, God is going over with Moses. He's telling them, okay, this is the boundary of Israel. This is, how far north it goes, how far south Israel goes, how far east it goes, and how far west it goes. So he gives specific boundaries of their land. And then he starts going into, okay, so these are the towns that you're going to set aside for the different tribes. And, this is what each tribe will get. So God is really trying to prepare them to go into the promised land. And, this is your area. and this is where you're going to set up camp, and this is where your town is going to be established. So it's time to go into the promised land, and Joshua is going to be the one that takes them. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.